Welcome to CryptoBell.Live. I'm Jake Novak. Joining us today is Brittany Kaiser, the CEO of Alpha Compute, and the Chief Investment Officer and Executive Chairman of Alpha Compute, Enzo Villani. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Brittany, it's always amazing to talk to you about everything that involves privacy and data, personal data, when it comes to anything computerized. You, of course, made your name for yourself as far as internet data, but AI, of course, takes us to an entire new level, and that was why you were so intricate in trying to get this company launched.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey to now be a bigger player in the AI infrastructure space, but really be the only company that is focused on privacy-centric AI. So we allow all of our clients to own their data from the beginning. They can use and benefit from AI, but never have to give their data to any third parties, which shouldn't be novel, but it is.
I want to get into some more of the specific points on that, but before I do that, I want to introduce Enzo. You're both lifelong serial or longtime entrepreneurs. What exactly about this attracted you to wanting to become part of this team, work with Brittany, and work with Alpha Compute?
The biggest opportunity was around the fact that really everything's changing. So if you go back to the first internet, we were just building that, and now we kind of have to rebuild it. So every single business on the planet, every single person is going to want some type of privacy-centric AI compute, because they don't really want to expose all of their personal data to someone else. When I met Brittany, I've known her for years because of the actual crypto industry, but what I really saw here was a really big opportunity for us to really join forces and create a company that could service privacy-centric AI compute to everyone.
One of the things I learned about economics is it's really easy to understand. You just have to get through those incredibly difficult sounding terms. It's actually all common sense. And I think, Brittany, you have provided a great way to, basically the same tool when it comes to AI. One of the points you made is usually talking about AI companies as if they have a landlord. If an AI company is using somebody else's cloud space, it's as if they have a landlord who can read your mail or maybe spy on you. I think that was a plot of a movie once in the 90s. So tell us a little bit about that and how Alpha Compute is different.
So when you are buying a product or a service, you don't normally expect that comes with quite a few strings attached to it. And in technology, usually when you're using any kind of platform, the strings are quite hidden. If you don't read the terms and conditions of any application that you're using on a daily basis, you don't realize how much you're giving away. From your personal data to your location data to things about your family and your business. If you're using AI these days, you're uploading proprietary information, IP, copyright, even things that you hope would one day be patentable, but you're giving away the rights to all of that. And so when you are renting your data, renting your technological life instead of owning it, it really means that third parties all around the world, sometimes millions of databases, end up having your personal information or the information from your business. And that's not what you really planned on. You thought you were just going to use a product to better your life or yourself or your company. And without that explicit permission, you saying you're okay with that or you know the rules around that, it can get pretty dangerous for you or your company.
And Enzo, it's more than just your private information. You mentioned like that private information getting out there just a moment ago, but it's also bankable, valuable property that you're handing over. I mean, it's not just, oh, my name and address and do I like to buy grills or Mets tickets. It's also what I've typed into the AI model to help them build their model. That's valuable, isn't it, Enzo?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're really running into something now where, yeah, if you're not careful, you're literally giving all of your thoughts, your ideas, your IP, anything that you come up with into a system that's being utilized to kind of collect all of the human thought process and put it into one system. And the problem is that the folks who have been in the history of building this type of technology don't have a great track record. You know, we've seen the honeypot issue, we've seen people really lose a lot of data, their data's exposed. How many times have you actually received that paper letter saying, oh, sorry, but Experian got hacked and all of your data sitting on the dark web. Now picture your your IoT data sitting on the dark web, or picture the data from your kid's bedroom sitting on the dark web, or picture things about you and your family and your psychological profile sitting on the dark web. We're talking about very risky stuff, and we just can't count on them. So we want to make sure that it's just a lockbox. Remember the old term lockbox? It's just a lockbox. We're going to make sure that at the hardware level, it's locked, it's encrypted, it's safe, and it's yours.
Brittany, you come into this with a lot of experience. People know you from the Cambridge Analytica story and how you tried to blow the whistle on that. That, to me, as big as the story as that was, that's small potatoes compared to what could happen with AI, and clearly this is a motivator for you.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago when I was still at Cambridge Analytica, what we were doing with data was simple compared to what is going on now with AI systems. So the amount of data that is currently being collected about us and by individuals and companies every day feeding into these connected systems, I think a lot of people don't really realize how much they are giving up. And that means that there are very powerful systems that now have very intimate information about you and your business and your strategy and your plans. And it will be next to impossible for you to ever own any of that if you've used a popular AI platform and you haven't read the terms and conditions. You should really think about if you actually own any of the things that you might be building in your enterprise. That is pretty scary for a business owner. It should be, but a lot of people really aren't thinking about it. So we want to make it easy so that confidential computing is completely accessible. You can run whatever open source or your personal models that you want to run, and no third parties ever get access to your data. Again, as I said, it really shouldn't be novel, but it is, and it's not currently accessible or affordable. So we want to make it as one-click easy as possible for people to choose privacy.
Enzo, you mentioned the hardware aspect of this. I wonder if you and Brittany can talk about that. Something that really stood out to me when I was reading more about Alpha Compute is this down to the chip statement that you made. You can't hack it if it's all the way down to the literal hardware. Can you guys flesh that out for me just a little bit more and tell me the difference between that and the hackability of software?
For sure. So there are a few different layers between you at your computer and the computers that are in data centers processing your data. So we have the actual firmware where it's large computers that are coming from Supermicro or Dell full of NVIDIA chips. They're sitting in a data center, and that's connecting to your computer, but there's a few layers between that. So there are firmware layers, that's the code that actually governs how the hardware is working, and then there's software layers. Usually there's no encryption at the firmware level. You're sending your data right into a software system, which might already be hooked up to thousands or millions of databases and data partners. Once you're going into a cloud, your data can be all around the world, and it is vulnerable because you only maybe have a basic encryption at the software level. When you are using confidential computing, from your computer down to the chip in the data center, you have end-to-end encryption. It means that your data, it's mathematically impossible for any third parties to get access to it. So it makes a one-to-one connection. So that's a specific computer, a specific GPU, a specific NVIDIA chip that is processing your information, and there's no third parties in between.
And these types of systems have been used by mission-critical firms and companies and governments. So at the government level, they have this type of encryption. At the exchanges, like the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, all those exchanges on their trading platforms will have that type of level of basic encryption, because they really, I mean, you've never really heard of the actual trading networks getting hacked, and there's a reason why, because they're actually really at your control. But now we can easily open this up. The costs have come down enough, even though everyone says the cost of chips are expensive and all that stuff, it's still much more cheaper than it used to be, and it's much more accessible via bandwidth and via the actual processing power that can actually happen. It can happen on a phone. So I think that right now we're at that cusp where everything is just actually coming together, and that the decentralized compute world is where we're from. The open source world. We can see a counterbalance to centralized compute, like the big cloud, service companies, which will never go away. They're always going to keep building and servicing, but there has to be some type of opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses and kind of individuals to have access to the same level of compute that they have to.
AI is a big umbrella term. Obviously, it encompasses a lot of things, but I can't remember a specific technology that has been more debated in the specific aspect of it, more than AI data centers right now. We're hearing everything from they're going to destroy our energy grid, they're going to destroy the environment, they're going to spy on us, all these kinds of things. How does alpha compute play into that narrative?
So let's take two of those subjects as separate matters. One is people being mad that the AIs are going to spy on them. Well, guess what? They're right. They're allowed to be mad. I'm mad. I've been mad about this for a decade. And now other people are finally starting to catch on. So I think right now we're in a zeitgeist moment where everyone wants to use AI. They see the benefits of AI, but they're afraid of adopting it. They're afraid of letting their children touch it. They're afraid of it being in schools. They're afraid of putting it in their business, and rightly so. So we're providing an alternative to that to say if you want to use all the great benefits of AI, you can, but it needs to be fully encrypted. It needs to be on confidential computing so you can run AI totally private. We're making that available. But I agree with the people that are angry. You know, we really should have questioned this earlier. Now it's gotten to a point where almost everyone's touching AI every day and they don't know what they've given away. So we're here to prevent that. But there's a second conversation, which I've been involved in very deeply over the past 6 years, which is, are data centers going to destroy the environment? Are they going to raise our electricity costs? Well, that's what everybody said about Bitcoin mining in 2020. And the entire world started going in an uproar over the amount of energy that Bitcoin's using, data centers being built for creating Bitcoin. And really that was just a disinformation campaign targeted at Bitcoin and the crypto industry in general, which we were able to prove over many years of work that actually Bitcoin is a ESG friendly asset class and is mostly renewable and stranded energy that wouldn't be able to be used otherwise. I worked with BlackRock, RMI, Energy Web, and tons of other groups to create the first Bitcoin sustainability certificate so we could show that Bitcoin mining companies were actually sustainable. I founded the first 100% renewable Bitcoin mining company, which I took public on NASDAQ, Griffin Digital Mining. It's now American Bitcoin, NASDAQ ABTC. And so I worked very closely on these initiatives for many years, making sure that we could actually prove that these data centers were, by and large, contributing towards sustainable energy, to green energy, and to lowering the cost of people's electricity. And that's been able to be proven over the 6 years. So when you use something like Bitcoin mining or AI and HPC processing, you are able to fund the development of new energy centers. When there are more energy centers, costs come down, not the other way around. There are also ways of making sure that you are not making adverse impacts on local water supplies. All of this is completely manageable. So I think the uproar right now is, again, a lot of targeted paid disinformation that is quite obvious. You can tell that some of that is coming from abroad. Maybe most of it's coming from abroad. Because if we stop AI data centers, if we stop American energy production, guess who wins? Not America. And so it's starting to get a little obvious that this is, a little bit of cyber warfare, and that is what it is. But I think more people should recognize it for what it is and ask the real questions, which is who wins if AI data centers and energy developments happen in America? America does. And Americans, regular Americans, benefit from that every day. Who wins if that's all stopped?
Right. I think that speaks well to your credibility and the credibility of the company in that in one part of it, you are sounding some alarm bells, again, about AI data and the privacy issues there and the problems there. But at the same time, you're also letting people know that there's an alarmism factor about energy usage and environmental impact. At the same time, there's got to be a mix of urgency but also calm at the same time, and is that something, Enzo, that just you're the executive chairman? I mean, your position is almost defined by taking that longer view.
You have two basic choices. One is, if we don't have our own energy and we don't have our own data centers and our own kind of AI stack, then you're going to go buy it from overseas. You've seen what happens to Germany when they kept on buying oil and shut down all of their actual nuclear power plants. Not a good idea. So we also think that there's also 5,000 existing data centers right now in our market that have not been actually retrofitted or changed to really handle AI. We are focused on the AI at the edge because we know that the large hyperscalers are creating these huge data centers because they want the brain to become bigger. And it's just physics. If all the machines are closer together, the brain becomes bigger and faster. But there's also new code stacks that are being written by us and by others that are allowing us to do edge compute in different data centers and still have the power and speed of a centralized cluster, which is very technical, but it's basically saying instead of putting one big brain of 40,000 acres in one plot of land, we can actually use all of the existing kind of data centers and still have the speed work. So we're working on that too. So we want to retrofit the existing data center infrastructure to help build it out quickly and do it in opportunity zones and do it in places where there aren't that many jobs and kind of rebuild the actual kind of industrial complex here. So I think, unless if we don't do this, you're going to be doing it overseas. I mean, you're going to be buying it from somebody else. Why would you trust another country and another state government or other actors, and you're not going to trust your own country? I mean, I just think that this is so mission critical because it's basically our collective human intellectual property that you cannot outsource it. You can outsource everything else, but you can't outsource this.
Well, that brings us to the word sovereignty, and I thought we were just going to talk about AI computing and the actual computing space as being like a new political map, being like a new country in itself. But that, what you've just talked about, also brings us to the discussion of energy dependency as well. For those of us who have been clamoring for a long time for more nuclear power and better and more modern energy grids, getting nowhere for decades and decades. But now, in the last few years, what we're seeing because of AI and these AI data centers, we're starting to see modular nuclear reactors being built. I mean, we're finally getting this done. So again, very much what you were saying before, this could actually be the opposite of energy alarmism. This could actually be finally puts us over the top and brings us into this new non-relying on foreign power type things and just more efficient, even if it is our own domestically generated power.
Well, it's back to what Bitcoin has been able to do over the past 15 years, but especially over the past 5 or 6 years, where new large-scale data center developments that were being built specifically for Bitcoin mining companies were able to fund huge energy developments. Now we see AI as the fastest growing industry across the entire world, and building AI data centers helps fund new energy developments. And guess what? A lot of those are selling energy back to the grid, and it's creating cheaper energy prices over time. So putting spanners in the works to stop some of these data centers from being developed is really destroying America's economy. And what a lot of people, I think, are not willing to recognize is it's also intervening in America's ability to be sovereign and protect our own borders and national security. If we have to send sensitive American data from Americans, American companies, the American government abroad because we don't have enough compute power here at home, that's incredibly dangerous. This should be a national security priority that all of these data centers have to be built.
You have the dual responsibility, both of you, of not only explaining to investors what you're about, what you're trying to do, but as we've made it really clear in the last few minutes, regulators, politicians, things like that. Is there a special dance that you have to do to make sure that you have the regulatory freedom to continue doing what you're doing? As soon as I hear energy infrastructure, to me that sounds like this is a chance for the government to get too much control over you and your growth. And that's one of the reasons why utility companies have been so stuck in the past. They've been government interfered with for so long.
But this is backfiring. Okay, so now you have these 3 or 4 massive companies that are doing the AI compute. They already have their data centers. They're being built. They're in the middle of building. Now you want to do the actual moratorium, so that everybody who wants to compete can't compete. So you just created a kind of oligarchy, like kind of monopoly or kind of duopoly amongst 5 players, so that they control all of the AI actual compute, and they're going to get more and more power. So if you're a government official, aren't you concerned that these people have that much power? Like, why would you not want to open it up so that everybody else can compete? And you have 20 AI companies, 50 AI companies, 5,000 AI companies, not 5.
Is that what one of your major battles, making sure that we don't end up with, for example, after the .com bomb, just a few big players like Amazon? To me, one of the most obvious massive monopolies in this country. I mean, the fact that other companies much smaller have been broken up and Amazon hasn't. I mean, is that one of your major battles, to make sure that a company your size can compete and not be swallowed up?
Yeah, I think right now we're talking about the right to compute. And I think all Americans and American companies should have the right to own their own data and own their own compute power so that they can have full sovereign AI stacks, and all of your information, your hard work, your effort, and even sensitive government data is all staying within our borders and in American control. I don't think there's much to debate about that, and most people who are in power representing American interests should easily understand that. So if we go back to, what our rights are here, we should have a right to energy, we should have a right to compute, we should have a right to own our data. There are many state bills that already state that. There are some federal laws that already state that, but combining them all together as one right to actually have your own infrastructure in the age of AI, I think is essential at this point.
Let's get back to those built-in safeguards that you talked about. We're talking about a lot of government intervention potentially. We're talking about maybe some customers and other industries not getting it, but you have these built-in safeguards. You talk about how you can't lobby some of these companies to the AI to do right by you. So you've created these hardware and other safeguards. So in other words, you don't have to worry about them breaking in the locked door. There's no door anyway.
Yeah, and the decentralized industries like crypto and blockchain, we say don't trust, verify. And that means you need to have an attestation layer, a mathematical proof that shows that no one gets access to your data. That's the entire point of our confidential computing, where you have the end-to-end encryption. You can mathematically prove that it's impossible for anyone to get your data. And so you're not trusting a company to do the right thing with your information. You are trusting math that says no one has your information besides you.
Why have it any other way? If you can put it on the hardware, and you can program into a smart contract the ability to trust, but through the actual verification of code, why would you have to trust anyone? Like, you don't even need terms of service anymore. Like that, and it's obviously been broken. I mean, how many people have been said that they're not actually listening to our conversation on our phone, and then I get, if I keep on talking about Portugal, all of a sudden I start getting all these Portugal ads. I don't really care. I don't mind it, but just tell me, and that's in the actual terms of service. But I'm signing up for that. But if you really don't want it, why do you have to be tricked into it? You can do it on code. It doesn't have to happen.
We've hit a lot of the human aspect here, but let's tug on the heartstrings just a little bit more, because one of the things that you talk about that really gets me is we are at this point right now where we have the opportunity to hand over to the next generation, our children, one of two internets. The one internet that can be where everything that they do on there is taken from them, is for sale, and there's no privacy, and another where they can be partnered in the creation of new knowledge, new data, and things like that. You're doing the second one, correct?
Absolutely. For me, the ability for the next generation to have the opportunity to own all of their data from the beginning, to have control of their digital footprint, to have control of what people know about them or not, and choose consensually to share what they want to share in order to grow and flourish and create businesses and contribute to their lives and the economy. I mean, that's a huge opportunity. Instead of right now, everyone renting their digital lives where large tech companies are taking advantage of everyone, we have the ability to own our data, invest with our data, contribute to LLMs if we want safely, as long as we're using different forms of encryption like confidential computing. These technologies are now available. We're making them affordable. We're making them accessible. And so there should be no more question of, should I give away everything at this price when you can have something of equal or even cheaper price, but with privacy too? Why would you choose the one that's stealing from you instead of the one where you are the actual owner?
Enzo, you read the biographies of people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and one of the things that a lot of those guys had in common is they really thought that, in their cases, personal computing would bind the world together, make a lot of people who weren't free more free, and just break the chains of borders and governments, repressive government. And in a lot of cases, the opposite has happened. I mean, you take a look at some countries that have used the technology to make us even less free. So it sounds to me like this is something that you've seen their mistakes and you can learn from them.
Well, I mean, I've been around since that kind of early 1994. I started getting online in 1994, and I have to say we had a vision of the world that was more free and so on. I do think that there have been times when it has worked, like Arab Spring and so on and so forth. But then we do recognize that the surveillance state is getting more and more powerful. And I don't think anybody wants that. Nobody wants to live in 1984, right? So That's the famous Steve Jobs ad. I mean, that's the famous Apple ad. So I think for us, all we have to do is create balance and accountability, and have people be able to compete, because I believe that competition always drives the best market. So if you have more people being able to actually compete and then the kind of accessibility, this is the other problem, is if you're using these products for free and they're taking all of your information, that actually has folks who can't afford it using those products and giving them all their information. So if you're wealthy, then you don't have to do that. You can have all the privacy you want, you can have everything that you want, lock boxes, everything. But if you're poor, you have to give up all of your actual data. That sounds like some type of weird kind of feudalism to me that we don't really want to do. So, if you want to get kind of philosophical, it just basically comes down to one thing. What kind of world do you really want to live in? We've seen them mess up the internet. The internet is not what the internet was supposed to be. CERN and all this is not what it was supposed to be. So, rights to having compute, rights to having the right bandwidth and so on and so forth is really appropriate for us as a species versus us being controlled by a group of 5 people.
For investors, this is obviously an attractive aspect of alpha compute. You're offering something that the other companies aren't offering. But in the long run, again, getting back to that question about being worried about swallowed up, whether it's by a larger company or governments that may not understand and not cooperate, you're still building a technology, again, getting back to that hardware, that is going to stick around, whether it's, for a lot of other uses, I think.
Yeah, we believe this is where everything's going. We have seen from government to military to enterprise, all of these organizations saying we want more confidential computing. We want to be able to encrypt down to the hardware level. We just don't have the ability to do it ourselves. So the more computers you put up, we're here as clients. The clients are out the door around the corner. So we really see that over the coming years that this is going to be essential, especially for regulated industries. And Accenture actually dropped a report a couple of weeks ago where they said about 1/3 of all AI workloads should be being run on a sovereign AI stack where no third parties get access to that data. But the infrastructure isn't there yet. So it's a race to provide it. There's no lack of demand.
We talked a little bit about the fact that this can rise up some of the poorer people in the world. I mean, it's interesting, you talked about how poor people are not getting the privacy that wealthy people can get in this new world. Actually, I think that that's an inversion. Usually wealthy people, that was one of the things they gave up. They were well known, you could follow them, maybe they were a little bit more ostentatious. But there's something here about unlocking some of the poorer people in the world in poorer countries and giving them a new value, a new commodity that they can sell at their own discretion. Is that something that that drives you here?
Yeah, it's something that I've been working on from the legislative and regulatory perspective for about a decade, and then also building the technologies to make that possible. When you can own all of your digital assets, all of your ones and zeros, your personal data and the data that you create in your business or in your professional life, you have so much value. This data is worth enough money to at least pay for your groceries, but if you have certain proprietary data, it can be worth way more than a high-level salary. So it's not just subsistence, it's something that you can even use as an investable asset, now that you can use your data sets to actually insert into LLMs that are being monetized. So it's a huge opportunity for people to participate in the digital economy, as long as they just have a single device. Even a basic smartphone can allow you to participate in the multi-trillion-dollar industry of data, which is the world's most valuable asset class.
So from the kind of investment viewpoint, when you look at Meta, the value of Meta is the users. It's a simple mathematical equation. If each user is worth $5,000 lifetime value, that means that you as an individual is worth $5,000 a year lifetime value. So you're just breaking up the math. So there's 2 ways to actually pay them to come to your platform. One is sell ads to people who want to talk to them, but the other is just give them something for coming. Instead of paying the subscription fee, you're paying them a rebate. Why not do that? It's the same marketing costs.
Right. And I love the metaphor you talk about the builder's obligation. You're literally, it's almost like you're building a building where people can not only feel safe in the confines of that building, but also a place where they can thrive and do great things. Brittany Kaiser, the CEO, Enzo Villani, the Chief Investment Officer, and also the Executive Chairman of Alpha Compute. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on CryptoBell Live. We'll see you again next time.